Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stephen Saucier.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Saucier, President of Carolina's Aviation Museum. And on behalf of our board and staff, members and volunteers, supporters and sponsors, it is my privilege to welcome you to today's celebration of one of the most stirring events of our time, the miracle on the Hudson. The safe landing, please. Let's remember this was the safe landing of a jet airliner filled with passengers and crew in the middle of the Hudson River. I want to take just a moment and recognize some special guests. First of all, Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyles and former New York Governor David Paterson, both of whom you'll be hearing from shortly. And of course, former North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory, who was mayor of Charlotte 10 years ago. And of course, there'll also be other elected officials and community servants. Thank you for your service, and thank you for being with us today. We are so honored to have nearly 100 men and women with us today who are here, who are on board Flight 1549, along with dozens of their friends and family members. In recognition of them, please join me in a round of applause. Also with us today are several others who were involved in the events 10 years ago. Air traffic controllers, first responders, and others who provided vital support in the wake of the near tragedy. Ladies and gentlemen, we salute you. Ten years ago today, 155 men, women, and children, most of them complete strangers, were bound together forever by something so improbable. We're here today to not commemorate what happened on January 15th, but more importantly, what was able to happen because of the successful landing. Lives that would have been tragically cut short were allowed to continue. Babies were born, weddings were held, families were raised, careers flourished, and other significant milestones were achieved. At Carolina's Aviation Museum, we are entrusted with the responsibility of being home to that enduring symbol of that day. The Airbus A320 plane stands in our museum next to the runway at Charlotte Douglas International Airport, where this afternoon a champagne toast will be made at 3:31 p.m., the exact moment that tragedy became triumph 10 years ago. We take our responsibility to safeguard and share this history very seriously, and we are grateful that we are allowed to tell this inspiring story every day. Along with the Airbus A320, other artifacts and interactive experiences bring this moving event to life. In fact, I'm pleased to announce today the donation of a new collection of items from Captain Sullenberger and his wife, Lori, including letters of appreciation and congratulations from around the world. Some of these you are able to view here today. We look forward to sharing this part of the story with nearly 70,000 guests who visit us every year. And we thank the Sullenbergers for their kind generosity. Thank you. As museum professionals, it is our purpose to not just retell the past, though, but to help shape the future. Carolina's Aviation Museum is expanding and strengthening its mission, aligning with the needs of our community to provide tangible impacts on people's lives. In particular, this museum recognizes its responsibility to address the issue of economic mobility by connecting our students to the explosion of technical careers in aviation and aerospace. Innovations in aviation and aerospace are accelerating and will continue to accelerate, and we must attract those opportunities here to Charlotte and the Carolinas. Our museum, cited as one of the 20 best aviation museums in the world by CNN Travel, has an evolving mission. It seeks to serve this region by inspiring and motivating our children to pursue these attractive opportunities in aviation and to get them ready for the work of the future. Last week, we announced that Carolinas Aviation Museum and the City of Charlotte, along with Charlotte Douglas International Airport, are working together on plans for a new museum facility as the airport prepares to repurpose our existing location to serve the region's growing private aviation needs. These discussions have been going on for a couple of years, and we're excited by the potential for an even more vibrant Carolinas Aviation Museum. Since the move will cause the museum to temporarily suspend some of its operations, our team is working diligently to safeguard the artifacts and aircraft in our collection, especially the Miracle on the Hudson. And we'll do this during this period of transition. Please rest assured, this history, many of your history, is in safe hands. Now, before we bring our next speaker to the podium, I'd like to thank our generous sponsors who helped make today's event even possible. First of all, our signature sponsor, American Airlines. Our gold sponsors, Bank of America, Collins Aerospace, and the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. And the many other generous sponsors you'll see recognized in your programs. We thank you all for your support. Now please help me welcome Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Kidd to give the invocation. Lieutenant Colonel Kidd.
Sir, welcome, sir. Join me, please. Gracious Lord, we've gathered today to celebrate and to give thanks. Flight 1549 was no accident. It was a divine miracle. Since that day, many special occasions have occurred. Weddings, the birth of children and grandchildren. Individuals have graduated and careers have flourished. Many have also experienced a renewal of friendships and life. None of this is taken for granted, and we embrace the challenges that lay ahead and give thanks for the outstanding accomplishments that have been achieved among your people. Truly, your mercies are new every morning. For the efforts of the crew, the first responders, and the citizens who chose to act on behalf of others, bless them bountifully. Now, Lord, bless the food and the fellowship, and may all that is accomplished here today remind us that goodness and kindness always triumphs. Help us to celebrate life, and may this event inspire hope and resolve for all involved. For we are a better people, community, and nation because of the miracle on the Hudson. For all you have done and continue to do, we give thanks. Amen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chaplain Kidd. So we have quite a packed agenda today, so please, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask everyone to continue to eat and to let us get on with the program. And now, to say a few words on behalf of Bank of America, it is my pleasure to introduce Chief Operations and Technology Officer, Kathy Besant. Kathy?
Thank you very much. Anyone who gives me 2 minutes and a microphone doesn't know me very well. Today is not about corporate sponsorship. It's not about corporate philanthropy. It is about a recognition of resilience and a celebration of family, and about taking a very uncertain period of time in history and turning it into literally a period of hope. Many of you have become family since that fateful day. The family created among the pilots and the crew and the passengers, their families, those who were in support. And Bank of America had a real set of family moments that day and over the last 10 years as well. Many people may think of us as a large corporation, but we had 22 people on the manifest that day on Flight 1549. 19 of them were actually on the flight. And these are not just people we knew casually. The first sleepover my daughter ever had at the age of 2, Pam Siegel and her husband. Vic Warnament and I have shared a glass of wine the only way friends actually share a glass of wine, which is around the kitchen counter. Fred Beretta and I had met just a day before that flight to talk about not just standard career stuff, but his hopes and dreams and what he hoped his career could deliver for his family. So, as fate would have it, when Sean Dortch, the former director of the Carolinas Aviation Museum, sat next to me on a plane and talked to me about the idea of bringing this particular plane to Charlotte, we were all in right from the start. Not because we wanted our name anywhere near it, but because we were honoring our family. When Tracy Montross cornered me, literally, those of you who know Tracy know she's capable of that. When Tracy Montross cornered me about sponsoring this luncheon today, the only thing that disappointed me was that Doug Parker and American Airlines had beaten us out for presenting sponsor role. This is a celebration, a recognition, a tribute to resilience that took, as I said earlier, a very uncertain economic time and gave us a sign that 2009 meant hope. My husband is a pilot. He was a naval aviator flying P-3s, doing submarine surveillance for 21 years. And when I came home that day, he said to me, "I wish you'd quit talking about this as a miracle on the Hudson River. That's not how pilots think about these things. Pilots train, pilots prepare. Pilots expect when they take off that their mission will be complete, and you will honor the pilot and the co-pilot and the crew by talking about a mission completed." I can't help it. What a miraculous mission it was. And congratulations to a team who thinks they did their job, but literally changed the world. We're proud to be a part of every second of it. Thank you.
And please, if you would help me welcome Mayor Weil-Laus.
Good afternoon, I think. Is it afternoon? Yes, it is afternoon. On behalf of the City of Charlotte, my colleagues on the City Council, and all of the residents of Charlotte, I would like to welcome each and every one of you to the Queen City for this 10th anniversary celebration. Now, I very seldom contradict Kathy Besant, and I take a real risk here doing it in front of all of you, when she says this isn't about corporations. But it is, because corporations create the ability for this community, the people that work within the corporations, to actually have intent and purpose. And so I'm not ashamed to say that Charlotte is a city that we're glad to have Bank of America and American Airlines here helping our community be better, because we know its foundation is with the people that work there, and that makes all of the difference. The other thing I'd like to say is my husband was also a pilot. The only thing I had was a home-built airplane in the garage. But he went out to the museum often because it was a place that you could share what it means to fly. Now, I used to fly in the back seat of a small plane, and I tell you, Mr. Parker, if you'd like to send me more tickets, I would really stop doing that. But what I want to say is that as a city, we are honored to be a part of an extraordinary celebration. It is a celebration of hope and courage, strength and resilience. Many of you remember in the months leading up to the miracle on the Hudson, Charlotte was suffering from the uncertainty of the 2008 financial crisis, which hit us especially hard. And quite frankly, we needed this miracle. So on this day, which coincides with Martin Luther King's actual birthday, on this day, February the 15th, in 2009, this miracle gave us hope that no matter what the challenges we face, we could overcome and prevail. And that hope and that resilience extends beyond 2009, and I would like to say it's here in 2019. We're thriving as a city. We're growing and adding 100 new people a day. And when we talk about the kind of community we want to be, we exemplify what takes place or what took place on January the 15th. And we are even more excited that we will be working with the Aviation Museum as the museum begins to build a permanent home that we will all be proud of and able to recognize as being a monument and a testament to not just that day, but to many, many years of making sure that people understand that you can build a bond of survival. So I'm encouraged today, or I want to especially recognize today a number of our distinguished guests. First, the crew and flight and passengers of Flight 1549, the first responders who responded that day to support the crew and the passengers. Again, Governor Patterson, thank you for being here with us, and all the other elected officials in the room today. I'd also like to make sure that everyone is aware that you're invited to come today at 3:31 p.m., the exact time the flight made contact with the Hudson, and take a moment to reflect on the courage of those aboard Flight 1549 and to honor the national feelings of hope that can come from a miracle landing. And that will take place today at the Aviation Museum. So again, thanking each of you for being here today. Enjoy this day of memories, reacquainting, and celebration. Charlotte will never forget the contributions that you're making. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, Paul Rinaldi.
It is truly an honor and a privilege to be here today to support the celebration of one of the proudest moments in aviation history and certainly in our profession. So much has been written and said about that fateful day 10 years ago. We know the pilots by their first names, the amazing job the flight attendants did, the passengers themselves, and of course, the first responders. And I'll add one of our own, Patrick Harden, the air traffic controller who handled the distress call, initiated the emergency of Flight 1549. Patty, stand up, please. Patrick will be one of the first to tell you that the people he relied on that day and through his whole career, tactical support, training, quality assurance, not to get too political today, but are no longer working because of the government shutdown. And this is something we have to work together as all of us in the aviation industry to end the government shutdown immediately and get every aviation professional back at work. The aviation industry is a tight-knit group. Each of us play a role in this tremendous responsibility of transporting millions of passengers and cargo around the world. The gentleman I'm going to introduce is a leading proponent of the efforts to make air travel safer and more reliable to everybody. As CEO of American Airlines, Doug Parker leads the largest airlines in the world. Among the causes he has championed is to improve the nation's air traffic control system, something our organization is 100% behind. Doug has a very personal connection with Flight 1549, and I would like to invite him up to tell his story.
Thank you, Paul. It's very kind. Thank you for all the great work you do on behalf of our air traffic controllers. We all really appreciate it. Well, first off, I should note, unlike a couple of our speakers, my spouse is not a pilot, but she was a flight attendant, so we have a bit of a theme going on. So good afternoon, everybody. It's really an honor and a privilege for me to be here with many of our current and former colleagues from American Airlines that are with us here today to commemorate the 10th anniversary of U.S. Airways Flight 1549. As has already been noted, this quickly became known as the Miracle on the Hudson, but all of us know that what Captain Sullenberger, First Officer Jeff Skiles, and Flight Attendants Sheila Dale, Donna Dent, and Doreen Welsh did on the Hudson was not a miracle, but an example of great skill and professionalism produced by years of training and experience. The quick thinking and heroic actions saved the lives of all 150 passengers on board the aircraft that cold January day 10 years ago. There's never been a story quite like it, and there probably never will be. It's also a reminder of why our crews train and prepare as hard as they do. At the time of the accident, each member of the crew of Flight 1549 had decades of aviation experience. Captain Sullenberger had been a pilot with U.S. Airways for nearly 30 years and had more than 19,000 hours of flight time, placing him among the most qualified airline pilots in the world. First Officer Skiles had more than 15,000 hours of flight time and had just moved over to flying the Airbus A320. Sheila and Donna each had nearly 30 years of flight attendant experience, and Doreen nearly 40. All 5 of these outstanding aviation professionals performed in an exceptional way under extraordinary circumstances because they trained to do it all their lives. We've always known the value of our professional pilots and flight attendants, and Flight 1549 highlighted that truth for the rest of the world. Captain Sullenberger, Jeff, Sheila, Donna, and Doreen, we are very proud of your place in aviation history, and we're honored to be your colleagues. Each of you have consistently said that you relied on your training and experience to simply do your job. But the interest in Flight 1549 and the events that followed went far above that training and experience. From being honored at the Super Bowl to attending the inauguration of President Obama, appearing on countless talk shows, and even being portrayed on film, you handle all the activity with dignity and professionalism. And on top of that, you're all just fantastic people. Just an amazing situation of well-experienced people, and every one of them just a unique and wonderful individual. We are also proud of our colleagues from across the company who sprang into action to take care of our customers in the hours, days, and weeks and months after the incident. Many of them are here today, and I'd like to ask the members of the American Airlines team to please stand up. Thanks. You all worked tirelessly to ensure our customers and coworkers were cared for. You also made sure the rest of the operation continued to run smoothly. Nearly every department at the airline participated in the recovery, and we applaud everyone who was part of the effort. There were many others who came to our aid on January 15th, 2009, who we want to recognize. Governor Patterson, we're extremely grateful for the way the people of New York City and the surrounding area pulled together to help out our passengers and crews. We're thankful for the local New York and New Jersey police and fire departments, the U.S. Coast Guard, the New York Harbor Master, the many ferry boat operators, and the New York water taxis, the Port Authority, and the EMTs, all of whom came to our aid. Thanks. We're also thankful for the Office of Emergency Management for the City of New York, the American Red Cross, the Salvation Army, and all the other agencies and organizations that were part of the outstanding support team. Their actions saved lives and brought us to this milestone anniversary today. Flight 1549 brought us all closer together as a company and as a community. That's really what an airline's all about. A big team of people, many of whom never know each other, coming together to ensure a safe and reliable flight for our customers. Each day, I'm honored to work among the 130,000 team members of American Airlines, and today, I'm particularly honored to represent them in recognizing the indelible impact that this incredible event 10 years ago had on the lives of so many people who are here in this room with us today and elsewhere. Thank you all very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Collins Aerospace, Bill Dolan.
Good afternoon. I'd like to add my welcome to everyone here today. I'm extremely excited and proud to be here representing Collins Aerospace at this 10th anniversary of the Miracle on the Hudson. Collins Aerospace was formed recently when United Technologies combined its UTC Aerospace systems and its recently acquired Rockwell Collins into one unit called Collins Aerospace. As the largest aerospace system company in the world, Collins is a leader in technologically advanced, intelligent, and safe systems for commercial, military, and space platforms. North Carolina is very key to our business. We have more than 2,500 employees throughout the state, including our mechanical systems business in Charlotte and our interiors business in Winston-Salem. Collins has been a proud supporter of the Carolina Aviation Museum, and we share their mission for engaging youth in science, technology, engineering, and math. We need this next generation to continue developing our systems to be smarter and safer. This next generation of scientists and engineers will absolutely continue to advance the safety of our flight travel. Collins Aerospace manufactures many flight-critical systems, including the Ram Air Turbine, which automatically deploys in the case of a loss of engine, thrust, or electrical systems. The Ram Air Turbine on Flight 1549 was a Collins product. We were proud to have that, as well as many other flight-critical systems on board Flight 1549 10 years ago today. It is now my privilege to introduce someone who has a personal connection with the occasion that we're here to celebrate. Please join me in welcoming the Governor of New York back in 2009, the Honorable David Paterson.
The other speakers worry about what they are going to say when they get to the microphone. I worry about whether or not I'm going to get to the microphone. At 6:30 p.m. on January 15th, 2009, Mayor Bloomberg and I decided to have a press conference to discuss the joint efforts of first responders, of the Red Cross, of passengers in a cruise ship who became part of the recovery of the air traffic controllers and all the other responders who made such an event over an extraordinary landing in the Hudson River. As we were leaving the anteroom on Pier 78 to come in and give the press conference, a rabbi who I knew yelled to me, "Tell them it was a miracle." And so I greeted the audience by saying, we had a miracle on 34th Street, and today I believe we have a miracle on the Hudson. So to Bill Dolan and those at Collins Aerospace, to Mayor Lyles, Governor McCrory, to Captain Sullenberger, to Doug Parker, the President of American Airlines, to Darrell Towns of American Airlines, who invited me here today, to all the first responders and the air traffic controllers, and anyone else that had anything to do with 1549, I apologize. I should have said, today we have a completed mission. Now that I've said that, how many missions get completed in the Hudson River? And everybody was saved. And it was one of the greatest moments, not only in aviation history, but I believe in American history. So first we heard that the plane had gone down in the Hudson. No one thought that anyone would survive, but we raced to Pier 78 when we started to hear that passengers were being evacuated. I met Mr. Fox that day. He's here today. He actually used it. You know, they tell you in the airplane, you can use your seat as a flotation device, and you sit there and you think, yeah, right. Well, he actually made it work that day. I also met a man, his first name is John. I don't remember his last name. He was an executive with Alcoa, and I said, how do you feel? He goes, oh, you're Governor Patterson. We had a press conference at Alcoa a couple of days ago, and I was supposed to introduce you, but I was late to the press conference. I looked at him. I said, John, you just had a death-defying rescue in the Hudson River, and all you can think to do is to apologize to me because you were late to a meeting a few days ago? And his colleague said that that's how John is, duty first. And so what a wonderful day it was for New York, and we needed a wonderful day. It was 8 years after the deadly attack on our country on September 11th, and it was in the midst of the financial crisis as well. But in congratulating everyone, I just have to tell you something that happened to me shortly after January 15th of 2009. It was February 11th, 2009, 27 days later, when a plane crashed bound for Buffalo, New York, in Clarence, New York. It killed 48 passengers and crew. It killed 2 other people who were in the house that it landed on, so 50 people died that day. A few hours after that, I had to go in a room with about 150 family members and try to express our condolences, all Americans and people from the state of New York. That's the other side of what could have happened without these miraculous efforts of the captain, his crew, the passengers, and the first responders. And it is a terrible day that you have to go through that. And I was looking for some kind of spiritual guidance at that moment. And the only thing I could think of is that a writer named Piaget in the 7th century wrote that there are times of extreme stress and challenge, and those times drive people together. And it drives them so much together, they forget about their individual issues. There is no national origin, there's no color, there's no race, there's no ideology. It's just people feeling that oneness. In the 12th century, Pope Gregory I said, in times of extraordinary danger and tragedy, it brings us together in a oneness with God. So if the miracle on the Hudson is an example to us, it is that in the Bible it says to love our neighbors as we would love ourselves, but maybe after situations like this and the great efforts that we saw, we should love our neighbors because they are ourselves. Thank you very much.
Well, I hope you are enjoying your lunch and enjoying your time together. What a special day. Please, let's give all of our speakers one more round of applause. Thank you all. Today is a very special day, and we're so happy to be spending it with the passengers and crew that made it a story and are allowing us to share that with them today. At 3:31 this afternoon, it's their special time in our museum, so we're going to give them a private ceremony. We ask that we give them that space, but we ask for you to share your moments, your miracle moments, #miracle moments. So when you have a chance at 3:31 or around that time, if you would please share with us your thoughts, your feelings, your miracle moments, and let's allow them the space in the museum to have their private time since they were the ones that experienced this. So in just a moment, we will be back for our town hall and our panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Squawk at 7134, and we're runway 360 at 5,000.
Okay, 1549, we'll go to clearance, back on point 7, verify information, Papa.
Cactus 1539 hit birds, so you've lost thrust on both hits, returning back towards LaGuardia.
You turn left heading up 220.
220.
Got emergency returning. 1529, he bird strike, he lost all engine, he lost the thrust in the engine, so he's returning immediately. Hi, Cactus 1549, it's going to be left traffic to runway 31.
Unable. We're going to be in Hudson.
I'm sorry, say again, Cactus?
I think he said he was going in the Hudson.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from WFAE's Charlotte Talks, Mike Collins.
Thank you. Wow, what a great, great day. I don't know how we're going to follow all the great speakers we just had because I can't quote a 4th century writer, Governor Patterson. And unlike many of the other speakers, nobody in my family, including myself, is part of the airline industry. I'm certainly not a pilot, but I do have 500,000 frequent flyer miles. With American Airlines. Trouble is, they date back to Piedmont. And the reason I have them is because I can't figure out how to use them. So I have to talk to the head of American Airlines before this thing is over today. Thank you all for being here. This is a great day because that day, 10 years ago, was a remarkable day. I can remember what I was doing that day. I was sitting at my computer preparing for the next day's radio show. It was a Thursday, and as things do today, my computer pinged, and it told me that there was an airliner down in the Hudson River on its way to Charlotte, and I thought, oh my God. So I immediately turned the television on, thinking sooner or later there'd be something on television about it, and it was. There was the plane in the water on television, and you could see people getting out onto the wings. And I thought, well, people survived this? And it turns out everybody survived it. And many people have talked about this today, that on January the 15th, 2009, it was a terrible time in this country. We had gone through this horrible economic slump, and we were still very much in it. There wasn't a lot of good news. This was remarkable news. This was a mission accomplished. I was going to say a miracle, but evidently we can't say that. anymore today. But it was a miracle. So today, in the next few minutes, we want to spend time looking at what's happened as a result of all of these people surviving and what it's meant to them, what it's meant to their families, what it's meant to the country to have all these people and the contributions they've been able to make because of the heroic efforts of the flight crew and the air traffic controllers and the first responders and everybody who cooperated to get those people off the plane and back on dry ground. So to start, I'd like to briefly introduce the passengers and crew and some special guests that we have with us today. And we begin with the flight crew of U.S. Airways Flight 1549. Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger is here. First Officer Jeff Skiles is also with us. Please welcome a woman who on that day in 2009 was a 27-year veteran with U.S. Airways, Sheila Dale. On that day, a 29-year veteran of U.S. Airways, Donna Dent. On that day, a 39-year veteran of U.S. Airways, Doreen Welsh. A big thank you to you all, by the way. There'll be pretzels later on. Okay. Please welcome passenger Carl Bazarian. Carl was in seat 16B. He is an international financier who won the Ellis Island Medal of Honor for his work in charity finance and development of Armenia. We also have with us a retired public health nurse, mother of four, who was on the plane with her mother that day, seated in seat 17E, Diane Higgins. Next, a cook who has appeared with Gordon Ramsay on his show and who with his wife competes in cook-offs. He was in seat 7A. Please welcome Casey Jones. On that plane were mothers and daughters and fathers and sons, and this next person is the daughter of a passenger, Valley Collins, who was also seated in 26D. She herself was on the plane. Addison was 9 at the time of this flight. Addison Collins, everybody. He's already stood up and been introduced, but we'll introduce him again because he's part of our panel and a remarkable part of our story. Patrick Harton, the air traffic controller that day. And who can forget all of the first responders and the people in charge of the Red Cross that day who really came quickly to the rescue of freezingly cold people. From the Red Cross, Scott Graham. Up next, Senior Vice President with American Airlines, who was with U.S. Airways at the time, Kerry Filipovich. And also with us is the person who oversees collections at the Carolinas Aviation Museum, where the aircraft obviously is on display, Katie Swearingen. Ladies and gentlemen, a nice round of applause for all of them. Make yourselves comfortable. Well, actually, I'm supposed to talk to you now. Before we talk to them, I'm going to talk to you because we're going to hear from these folks about all of their things that have happened to them in their lives over the past 10 years. But we also have with us in the audience today, I think about, if we've counted correctly, 80 passengers and crew members, more than half of the 155 people who survived the flight of Flight 1549, as well as their families and friends and the beneficiaries of the success of that day. You're here, and we're all here to celebrate this last 10 years. And in preparation for today, the Carolinas Aviation Museum took a survey of the passengers to see what their lives have been like over the last 10 years, and they found out some really neat things that I want to share today, and I'd like to try something a little fun, we hope, and that is as I talk about things that may be particular to you, that may have involved you, that you may have experienced as well, that may apply to you. Stand up, make your presence known. In the 10 years since January 15th, 2009, nearly 25% of the people on that airplane have retired. They were slow to rise because they've retired. Another 25% have had children. Whoa, look at that. And it doesn't stop there because many more have had grandchildren. So these numbers are approximate, but well over 50 new lives have come into the world among these people since the landing on the Hudson. And you are all here to celebrate them as well. All told, let's see here. There have been countless graduations, weddings, birthdays, anniversaries celebrated. Many of you have climbed mountains, run marathons. Here's something I'll never understand. At least one of you, Clay Presley, has learned to fly. You've pursued new passions. At least one of you started a company, adopted a child, become a social worker, or you went on to work helping firefighters and other first responders as a way of saying thank you. Many of you all of you probably pretty much started as strangers, except for those people from the Bank of America on board that flight. But you've all kind of built friendships amongst yourselves along the way. And two of you say you're like sisters. Are they in the room, the people that say that they're like sisters here? Or maybe it applies to all of you, except the guys. Most of you say that you will never forget those harrowing moments from the flight, the initial collision of those birds with the engine fire, what it smelled like in the cabin, the silence when the engines stopped, and that message from the flight deck, brace for impact. And there have been difficult times for a lot of people in this audience today. Some have suffered PTSD. At the same time, those people have managed to reach out to others who are suffering from the same thing. And sadly, 2 passengers have passed away in those 10 years. Lucille Palmer, a mother and grandmother, who you'll hear more about later, and Donald Jones, the father and medical association executive. But most people tell the museum that what they remember most are uplifting moments that day and in the many days that have followed, particularly going back to that day, the kindness of strangers, a dry pair of socks, and calling home from the wings of the airplane to say, I'm safe. For some, there's a deeper spirituality now. Others volunteer more. And there are a couple of mottos that have emerged from the collective responses from all of you, like, I'm more afraid now of not living than of dying. Try not to worry. Don't sweat the small stuff. Don't bother with negative people. And what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. Surprisingly, knowing what you know now, most of you say you would still get on that airplane. And you get on airplanes. You are a traveling bunch of people. You travel more now than you did before the plane went down. You've flown millions of more miles on business, on vacations, on mission trips, and at least one of you, only one of you really, has said they haven't flown since that day. And there are also critters and young people among you that have been named for what happened that day. There's a dog named Hudson. There's another dog named Sully. It's a Labradoodle. Do you know about this dog? Yeah, you do. And there are countless moments and contributions and achievements that have occurred in many people's lives since that day. So now, let's talk to these folks about what they've been up to in these last 10 years and what these last 10 years have meant for them and to their families. And this is meant to be, I have specific questions for most of you, not all of you, but please chime in if you want to augment on the conversation, take issue with something that somebody has said, bring your own story to the floor, even though it wasn't a question that I asked specifically of you. This is going to be a free-for-all. And if you look at this and you watch the TV show Survivor, this looks like the last episode every season of Survivor. So I'll be Jeff Probst. Okay, let's start with the flight crew. Can I call you Sully, or do I have to call you Captain?
Oh, you can call me Sully.
Okay. Jeff, Donna, Sheila, Doreen. I'm just curious about what the most important things that you've taken away from that day. Once you got past the initial trauma, what sticks out in your mind as the most important change in your life or the takeaway from that event? I'll start with you. You're sitting right next to me, Sully. I'll start with you. Yeah, or Jeff.
You know, as an airline pilot, I really have learned to value the training that we receive at U.S. Airways and at American Airlines. I firmly believe that it was probably the most advanced safety management system in the industry that we had and we have today. But what I've taken away from it, because that was my first flight out of training. Just come out, finished what we call my type rating ride just the week before, and now this is my first trip on an Airbus, and this happens. But everything that I learned came to my aid. I really learned the value of the training that I've received, the preparation that I received, and how intensive that was. But also, it almost surprised me how well that came to, at least for me, to my aid on that day.
And you were actually, if I'm not mistaken, flying the aircraft at that point when the bird struck. Is that correct?
Yes, I have said this many times. I have made Sully everything that he is today. If I had been flying the plane or sitting in the next seat as the captain of the plane, I know what would have come out of my mouth when that happened. What did you say that didn't get broadcast? No, it was in the movie.
Okay.
Don't know that I want to repeat it here on stage.
Okay. What about the rest of you? You're back in the cabin with passengers who don't always pay attention to you, and now this is a moment when, by God, they should have paid attention to you. What do you take away from this?
Well, I guess I was hoping, do they have those safety cards out now? Maybe they're finally looking at those in the next few seconds. But I was really amazed at the passengers and how they reacted to when we began the evacuation. We're trained that maybe they're going to be pushing and shoving. This was a very orderly evacuation in my mind. Because we all had a common goal. We all wanted to get off the airplane and be rescued. So I saw the best in people. When I turned around, I was on my raft and looked at the wing, I saw people helping each other. And it just really warmed my heart to know that we were all in this together. We were all taking care of each other, and that we were going to make it back to shore.
You train for this, you tell passengers what to do in case of an emergency, and then an emergency strikes, and I would think that for Donna and for Doreen, that this emergency is not something that's happened a lot in your careers, and here it is. What goes through your mind?
Again, we fell back heavily on our training. We've been well trained through the years, and we had a very educated, thank goodness, group of passengers. All the Bank of America people and all the world travelers that we had been a different destination, a different group of passengers. It probably would have had not the same consequences. And I want to thank all of you for being so smart and at some time having read your card.
And Doreen, if I did the math right, you had the longest flight experience of any of the flight attendants on that flight, 39 years, 38 years.
And I was only 19 when I started. Let's get that straight.
I was going to say 13 or 14. They were breaking child labor laws, but
they took me out of kindergarten on training.
But this had probably never happened to you either. So what has this meant that you went through this and came out on the other side and are part of this event that has been immortalized in every way possible?
No, I've never been through anything like this. I mean, there were instances that we all been through, but nothing like this. And you know, you've asked how we change, and in many ways, but I guess mostly what I try to do now is enjoy life, spend time with the people I love. And what's that saying? You know, take the trip, buy the shoes, eat the cake, life is short. I try to live like that because it is. It's flying by. Heck, it's been 10 years already. How did this happen?
So everybody's talking about how their training came into play on that day, and Captain Sullenberger, certainly that played a big role, but it seems to me, and maybe I'm completely wrong about this because I don't fly planes, but it seems to me when something like this happens, you're writing the rule book as you go, are you not, in real time?
Yeah, this was a novel, unanticipated event for which we had never specifically trained. In our flight simulators at the time, it was not possible to practice a water landing. The data don't exist, they aren't programmed for it. So the only training we'd ever gotten for a water landing was reading a few paragraphs in a manual and having a theoretical classroom discussion. So we had to very quickly take what we did know, adapt it, and apply it a new way to very quickly solve this problem and get it right the first time in less than 3.5 minutes. And that's why it was so important that Jeff also had been a captain before in the 737 before he came to the Airbus. He also has 20,000 hours of flying time. He was able to immediately and intuitively understand this developing crisis as I did, because I didn't have time to direct his every action. He had to know what he should do to help me. In other words, we were able to collaborate wordlessly in a situation where the time pressure and the workload were so extreme, we didn't have time even to talk about it. If you could have seen us, if you could have sat in the jump seat on that flight to the river, not that you would have wanted to be there with us, and watched us work together, you would have thought that we'd been working together as a team for years. I met him on Monday when we started this 4-day trip, 3 days before this challenge of a lifetime.
Wow.
So that's just an indication of how deeply internalized are these, not only these technical skills, flying skills, but the team skills that we learn, that I used to teach, to how to solve any problem in an airplane, have a paradigm at the ready to impose order on chaos.
So am I to take from this that that these passengers and crew were not particularly lucky to have the two of you in the cockpit? Could anybody have done this? Any pilot at then U.S. Airways have done this? Or were we really fortunate that the two of you had not only the skills, but this intuitive ability to work back and forth together?
Well, a lot went right that day. The snow had stopped, the visibility had improved. We had an experienced crew. We had passengers who travel a lot. It happened at a point in the flight where there were viable options still available to us over one of the most densely populated and developed areas of the planet. But you know, it took us 40 years to become overnight sensations, and we were standing on the shoulders of everybody else who's done this. And there are hundreds of thousands of people who over 4 or 5 decades have made this system in which we operate so resilient, so robust, that we were able to do these things. And so there are a lot of people out there who have that same dedication, who feel that same obligation that we felt to do whatever it takes to save every life.
So this great success, this remarkable success has given the people behind you and the many people in the audience 10 more years that they might not have had. So Carl Blazarian, let me begin with you. I'd like to hear from everybody who was a passenger or on that aircraft what this last 10 years, in just a couple of words, has meant to you.
For my fellow passengers, and there's kind of a bonding here, but it was a positive experience. So for me, immediately, what I learned from this positive experience is that I have zero tolerance for negative people. And I'm one of the older passengers, and for the young people, my fellow passengers, if you walk into a room, whether it's a business situation and there's negative vibrations, leave the money on the table. If you're establishing a social relationship with somebody and that person isn't of the same character or same ethics and so forth, don't push the relationship. What that translates to is life is too short.
Diane.
I'm just so grateful to be alive, to have this gift of life, which life is so fragile and could be over in a minute, and I do really appreciate that. I am so grateful to have my family, to be able to see my children grow and see, you know, our grandchildren, which we just had our latest grandchild born on Christmas Day, last Christmas Day. Yeah, she's beautiful. My husband and I snowbird now. We live the good life down in Florida, and just enjoying life, and being retired is the best.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, your mom, Lucille Palmer?
Oh, yeah. My mom passed away in 2015.
And she was on the flight with
She was
you
on the flight
that day.
with me.
So what did you spent 10 extra years with your mom. What did that, you spent 10 at least?
Oh, well, we had 6 more years
6 more
with her.
years.
And
What was that, what does this mean to you?
She just thought she was a celebrity. And of course, we had the 2 actresses portray us in Sully's movie, so she thought, you know, she wasn't alive then, but she would have just loved that. But yeah, she was able to see more grandchildren being born, and she enjoyed her last few years, but we're very grateful that she was able to have 6 more years.
Casey Jones is sitting next to you. What have these last 10 years meant for you?
Mike, it's been amazing. I reflect back on that day, and I echo the sentiments of everybody else here on the panel. I reflect back on that day, and I think about the end of the day for me, where I was in a hotel in Weehawken, New Jersey, or in Edgewater, New Jersey, actually. And it was the first time that I had looked in a mirror since rescue. I fell in when I was rescued. When I got to Weehawken Ferry Terminal, they came and passed out pants and shirts, and the first mate on the boat that rescued me had given me his hooded sweatshirt. When I looked in the mirror, the shoes that I was wearing were soaking wet, so I was wearing 2 pair of sweat socks from Adele's Sporting Goods that somebody had bought, but they were soaking wet because I'd walked in the snow. I had on a pair of pants that were 4 sizes too big and just held up by my belt. My shirt was 2 sizes too small, and I had that hooded sweatshirt that zipped up to here. My hair was going everywhere because I'd fallen in the water before rescue. And when I went to brush my hair over, I found a cut on the top of my head that I'd opened up when my head went into the tray table on impact. And the image that I saw looking back at me that day was that of a homeless person. And it gave me a care and a compassion for the homeless that without going through this experience, I never would have had that gift. It took away every bit of judgment. It took away every bit of anything but positive in how I can help. And these last 10 years, again, echoing everyone's sentiments up here, and making the most of each and every day, helping the homeless and doing some things is certainly at the forefront of my heart and something that I've tried to do in that time.
A lot of people that the museum have surveyed have similar things to say about how it's changed them in ways that they never thought anything could. So when your family, who didn't go through this experience, look at you, do they understand how you've changed and why?
I hope they understand, because they're certainly a part of some of my efforts. I do a turkey drive every year for the Salvation Army. The family's a big part of that. What I can tell you is our relationships, we were always very close. Those relationships are even deeper. The night I got home, my wife and youngest son were up in Buffalo on a different trip. And my two daughters, who were aged 20 and 24 at the time, I got home, and from midnight until about 3 in the morning, we just laid on the bed talking, just looking at the ceiling, talking. I don't even remember what we talked about, but it was one of those magical moments that I'll never forget. One of those things that really deepen that relationship, and as everybody else, family is just so, so important.
Yeah. Addison Collins is to your left. Go ahead. You were 9 that day, and your mother was on the plane. She's here today with you that day. And you've gone on to go to college, and you're majoring in political science with minors in Spanish, Arabic, Middle Eastern studies at Wake Forest. So you've had that opportunity, but you've always also had the opportunity to continue on with your relationships with friends and with your mom. How have the two of your lives been positively impacted by the 10 years that have followed that incident?
I think that I've learned a lot of lessons that a lot of kids my age haven't had the opportunity to learn, and I've definitely grown to cherish my relationship with my mom more than I think I ever could have if it hadn't been for that day. But I think that as a kid, you grow up and you think that your parents are invincible, and you think that you're invincible. You think that crazy accidents, like it happens to other people, it's not going to happen to you. And so having to learn that that's a lie at such a young age. Over the years, as I've grown up, I've come to recognize the significance of that, and it definitely, I think, matured me faster than it would have had this not happened. But it's definitely strengthened my relationship with my family. It's changed the way I've looked at life. I know my mom has taught me so many wonderful lessons. She's done an amazing job raising me and my 2 brothers. I've learned to appreciate every day because of what she's been through. I've watched her teach and inspire other people. I've watched her serve others. We've traveled together. She's instilled a love of travel and adventure for me, and that's really molded me into who I am.
Carl, go ahead. I was told, Carl, that you had a premonition all your life that something bad was going to happen to you.
I've been traveling a long time, since I've been 25 years of age, traveling to Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. And 7 or 8 times a year, I would have this premonition of me. There's no passengers, no crew, but I'm in the back of a plane, a jet plane, and I have to make a decision whether to go under a bridge or over a bridge. And I didn't learn. I flew with some fellow passengers, Frida, a good friend, that she wanted to see her children. I flew to Charlotte that same night. We turned the bus around, the Port Authority, and went right to U.S. Air and got on the next flight.
Wow.
And at about 12 o'clock midnight, I was in a hotel, and I turned on the TV, And I didn't realize that Sully and Jeff had to make a decision, or, that we had just cleared the GW Bridge by 600, 800 feet, maybe from the pinnacle. And again, it was a dream of anxiety, and my wife would have to put up with it, and I would pop up. The dream immediately disappeared. It's never entered my life again.
Wow. Katie Swearingen and Carrie Filipovich, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here because each of you have a job today that either centers around the airline industry or aviation history, and in your case, Katie, you work with the airplane every day that we're talking about here. But let's start with Carrie. You work for American Airlines. You were with U.S. Airways when this happened. How have the events of that day and the success of that day impacted your relationship with the work that you do in the airline industry? And how has the industry in some way changed because of this?
Yeah, and I think it's whenever things like this happen, it makes you stronger as a company and as a team, and that was certainly the case for us. And I think a lot of great things came out of it. So we certainly, in the aftermath, and what my role was leading some of the service recovery efforts and working with our customers to make sure that we could meet their needs. And we had, as Doug mentioned earlier, just teams and teams of people across the airline that were doing all sorts of things from customers, from assisting with their travel home to trying to help them get into their homes when they didn't have their keys, or rent a car when they didn't have a driver's license, and all sorts of things like that. And it was an emergency response effort, and we, just like our crew members, train and prepare for emergencies. We do that across the airline too. But this one was quite different than events that we'd practiced in drills, and just trying to make positive contact with all the customers in the aftermath when all of you were moving around and going places and helping each other and finding help. That was a challenge, and it made us really recognize the need internally, and some of my colleagues and I were talking about this earlier, to have a better automated process, and so we can respond more quickly and nimbly, and so we've built a lot of systems around that. And then one thing that I think is the most amazing outcome of this accident is something really that Sheila led, and I think probably she could talk about it better than I could, but the development of the critical incidents response team, which responds and helps our crew members when they go through challenges like this. And again, I shouldn't speak for Sheila on that.
Well, I'm going to ask Sheila about that, but I want to follow up with you on what you just talked about, because most incidents like this do not end successfully, and they certainly don't end with every single person on the airplane walking away from that unscathed. And so it would seem to me, and I just thought about this yesterday when I was putting together questions, I just thought, I wonder if the airlines ever thought about when people exit an airplane, particularly women, they leave their purse. In that purse is their identification. How do you get them on the next flight home? They can't go through TSA. They haven't got a driver's license. You made all that happen.
Yeah.
How?
Well, we have a care team of trained individuals across the airline. Currently at American, we have over 5,000 trained care team members in all locations of our airline, and that speak many languages, and they are prepared to respond and help. And so when we have an incident like this one, we assign care team members to each person that was on the plane to provide those needs. And then a lot of the things, like you said, that were unique, we had to get creative, and we had also a team of our reservation agents in Phoenix who were serving as a first contact center and providing for the needs of the customers. And we had, probably one of my best personal lessons from this that I apply all the time is cast your net wide, because we had people from all over the airline calling saying, what can I do to help? And I don't think we turned any of them away. So we even had team members from finance and human resources and other places just walking the floor in the call center and trying to help our agents develop creative solutions to get the customers where they needed to go, or get family members in to help the customers.
It was amazing. It's amazing. Katie, the Carolinas Aviation Museum has been around in Charlotte at least for a long time, but this aircraft, Flight 1549, is the star of the museum. And you have, I guess, the privilege of observing people who had nothing to do with this flight. They weren't passengers. They don't know anybody on it. They just saw the movie, or they live through the experience vicariously on the news, and they come and they want to see and touch and be around that airplane. What have you overheard them saying? What does that plane mean to them? They must whisper among themselves.
We get a lot of different reactions from visitors, but there is a general reaction when you walk into the museum hangar of kind of a, wow, and just sort of looking at the plane in awe. A lot of visitors will ask, strangely enough, or strangely to us, is that the real plane? I think it's, very amazing to be that close to an aircraft that's been through something this tremendous, but also just to be that close to an aircraft in general. So we watch it impact people every single day that they walk through the door. And we most recently added the Sullenberger's family collection of letters that people wrote Sullenberger or Sully over the last 10 years. And you just really saw how impacted not only passengers and their families were, which was just beautiful to read, but also people that weren't involved with the event at all, internationally, and especially people from New York.
And it's kind of a memorial, but it's a memorial in a different sense. Unlike the 9/11 Museum or the Holocaust Museum, this attraction at this museum is one of life and success and overcoming phenomenal odds. Wow. There were 3 people who had 155 people's lives in their hands. Captain Sullenberger, Jeff, and you, Patrick Harton. You were the air traffic controller on that day. And when you listen to the recordings, you sound like a guy who's almost shocked about what's going on, and you are the guy who has to help these people land this plane. Did you think that that was going to happen, or was this going to be a tragedy?
Whether or not it was going to be successful?
Yeah.
No, actually, I didn't. My plan was always to get them to a runway. But for the first time in my career, up until that point, I've been a controller 10 years, and no matter what you threw at me, I was able to handle it, get the aircraft back to a runway, and it becomes a non-event. That's what we do. We make events non-events. And for the first time, I was presented with a situation. I could have cleared every runway from LaGuardia to Charlotte, and he wasn't going to make a runway.
Right.
So that was kind of hard to deal with.
So when he says, I think we're going to go in the Hudson.
Right.
And you say again?
Say again.
And another aircraft tells you, I think he said
he was going in the Hudson, yes.
Did you really not hear him, or were you just in disbelief?
It was a combination, actually, because when I was coordinating with Teterboro Tower, I left a line hot to Teterboro Tower so they can hear in real time my communications with Sully. It's a lot easier than going back and forth, hitting a line and communicating. So having that line hot, it's harder to hear the pilots because it's like hearing like an open mic. So it was a combination of, yes, I had a hard time hearing him, but also not wanting to accept the fact that he said he was going to be in the Hudson. Because what I envisioned and what actually happened were 2 totally different things.
Right. If I recall the movie correctly, as soon as the plane was down successfully, the actor playing your character, was relieved of his position so he could go off and relax. Did that in fact
There was
happen?
no relaxing.
Scott Graham, you're with the Red Cross, and the Red Cross handles tragedies and disasters all the time. But on this day, everybody, not just the Red Cross, but first responders came together as though it had been an event that had been rehearsed for years. It was effortless. It appeared to those of us watching it on television, this is exactly how it's supposed to be. How much of that were you making up as you went along? And it's just serendipitous that it all came together so well.
Well, somebody asked me earlier today out in the lobby, how did you all get there so fast? And
how did you get there so
my
fast?
My answer was, I think providential, because our chapter is located at 49th and 10th. So we weren't far away from where the passengers were coming to be offloaded and be able to help so quickly. But we also had readiness. The real answer to your question is, how does it happen, is that you train together. You have a big team. No one agency or one group. Our friends from the Salvation Army were helping us. our team in New Jersey were responding just like we were.
But this is New York City, and you know,
Yes.
getting across town in New York City is a problem.
It
So
is.
How did
sometimes.
you all get there?
We were just around the corner by proximity to
All of you? I mean, the Red Cross
Well,
was, but all
we
of
had
you?
a lot of our team was already on duty, and we were fortunate at the time of day as well. But when we put out a call to our volunteers, they came immediately. After what we'd been through in the city before, I think people were very responsive, and we have a great team. So training is I think what takes over, as several have said today. We had a training earlier that summer with NTSB about aviation incident response and how to coordinate, and we have had a lot of incidents to respond to in New York City, nothing quite like this. But really your teamwork with your agencies, your FDNY, the police department, New York City OEM. My first call that day was from the first deputy, Calvin Drayton, in New York City OEM to tell me that this was going to happen. And he said, we're going to have a plane land in a river. And I said, which river, Calvin? He said, the one closest to you, which was the Hudson, thankfully. And we went into action immediately.
I want to follow up on something Carrie mentioned, Sheila Dale, because one of the things that came out of this, and other, I guess, airlines had this at the time, but U.S. Airways did not, and that was a team that supports not the passengers, but the crew who have to go through this. Talk about, because you're the driving force behind, and you're being credited with that effort, behind this critical incident response team. What drove you to spearhead that?
Well, Governor Patterson mentioned the Colgan flight that, everyone lost their lives. And I remember reading about some of the passengers, and they were involved in things, and they were not able to carry through with what they were, focusing on. And that made me sit there and think, what's my takeaway from 1549 and how it affected me? And it was that, I was extremely affected mentally, emotionally, but I wanted to work through that and return to work. And so I started researching peer support teams and just started, putting the facts together, approached the company, and with good fortune, Doug Parker was willing to begin the program. And my flight attendants, they're my family. Like when I go to work, I see people I've known for, 35 years, 39 years now. And, I wanted them to be able to become resilient when they have things happen. Like I had something pretty major happen, but we have a lot of incidents on the plane. We have severe turbulence where there are injuries, medical emergencies, and so I wanted my family of flight attendants to be able to reach out to a program that would help them get back to their job in a healthy way. And as of today, I believe we've reached out to 15,000 crew members since we've begun, calling or them calling us and offering information on how they can overcome any trauma they've experienced. And it's a very successful program, and I was given that after 1549 through the pilots program, and so I just thought the flight attendants, we should have this, and so thankfully we do. We have a team of 200 volunteers.
All right, let me ask a silly question, because I believe the five of you sitting in the front here and you, Patrick, are all characters in that movie. Sully, are you pleased with how you were portrayed? You look just like Tom Hanks, so are you pleased?
Yeah, the short answer is yes. I mean, you have to understand that it wasn't my film, it was Clint's film. I was the subject of it along with everybody else. Yeah. But they have to make important decisions about how to do it.
Right.
Yeah, and so they have to compress time, they have to use composite characters, and they have to make it something people will pay $12 to go see. So, but I think the flying sequences in particular are very accurate, often taken verbatim from the cockpit voice recorder transcript. If I had my druthers, as we used to say in Texas, I would have made the investigation scenes more nuanced, It was not at all that they were out to try to get us, but they had their own agenda, which is very different than ours. And they were trying to find the truth no matter where it led. And if our reputations got in the way, so be it. It's that the process is inherently and necessarily adversarial. It wasn't that they were. I think also it's important to note that the NTSB process, of which I'd been a part as a pilots union volunteer accident investigator years before, is something I understood well. And it's a very valuable, very necessary formal lessons learned process that we can draw from to make aviation safer. Digressing for a second, one of the disappointments about the result of this investigation is that, as is typical of investigations, the NTSB made 35 important safety improvement recommendations after our flight alone. Sadly, of the 35, only 6 have been mandated by FAA that the industry observe. So we still have a lot to learn from this investigation that has yet to be implemented.
Okay. And one final question. You said it was Clint's movie. That's Clint Eastwood. He was the director. But it's based on your book. So which is better, the book or the movie?
Well, you know, the film would not have happened without the book being optioned, but the film went into a lot more that happened after the book had been written. Right. So I think overall it was good. What do you guys think?
Go ahead. He asked a question. You can respond.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What did you think?
I'm going to give a much shorter answer than Sully did. I was very excited to be played by a man 6 years younger than me with Hollywood good looks and, most importantly, a full head of hair.
Well, thank you all for this hour that we spent together, and thank you all, particularly these 3 people right here and the 3 people over there, for what you did on that amazing day 10 years ago. I think that's one of the things that makes this so touching to a lot of people and so important to a lot of people, that this was one of the kinds of success stories that we don't get enough of in our lives, and I'm glad that you lived through it, and that we all did, as a matter of fact. And I want to thank all of our sponsors that made this event possible today, and thanks to the Carolinas Aviation Museum, who keeps this day alive in a way that if you haven't seen that plane in that hangar, go and do it, because it will take your breath away when you walk in there. Thank you all for being here. Great. Thank you. Yeah, can you guys stay for a moment? They want to take a group photograph.
Thank you very much.
They want to take a group photograph.